What's going on, JP Football Fanatics fans? It's your boy JP here, back again, where it's been quite a while since I've done a live stream video, and I just want to kind of come out publicly and just say I apologize that I haven't been on my channel and been able to do podcasts consistently within the last month or so. With going through all sorts of different things, like going on vacation away up north and um, getting back into the school aspect of things, because in case you didn't know, I work in a school, so trying to get all that situated and everything it's been a lot to kind of really deal with. So I haven't really been able to have much time to be able to do all the live streams that I promised on my Facebook account and everything like that. So I do apologize that I haven't been consistent with that, but now I'm here. I'm actually doing this. This is like the first time in like a month since I've done a live stream. So I'm really happy to be able to come here tonight and be able to broadcast to you live of all of my week one NFL picks. It's crazy to think about that. We already just went through all of preseason, and we've gone through a lot of different offseason news that's been going on as far as injury goes and trade deadlines and contract issues. It's been a very, very vocal off season. So I feel like this is really like the time to really start like thinking about some of these things, because there are still some questions about some certain teams as far as player statuses and everything. So we'll be able to talk all about that tonight. We'll also talk about the spread tonight and which ones I kind of recommend you taking, which ones I would say probably try to avoid a little bit. But it's JP Football Fanatics telling you to come here live right here, right now, where I'm ready to give you all my week one NFL predictions for the 2023-24 NFL season. If you have not done so already, please be sure to drop a like on this video. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to also hit the subscribe button as well to help grow the subscribers of this channel. It's been kind of growing slowly a little bit. We're at 25 people so far for the subscribers, and where I feel like that is good, but I feel like we could also be doing a lot better with the subscribers. So tell your friends about us and everything. Kind of spread the word around and saying, hey, this guy is really good. I think you should check him out. May not be Colin Coward. He may not be the bottom line view. He may not be that franchise guy or anything like that, but he's JP Football Fanatics. He's his own guy. He's the guy he's good to listen to. He's going to give it to you as is. And I think that's what you need from a podcaster. So please be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave comments down below on what you think your picks are this week. And let me know in the comments what you guys think about my personal picks and my bets and everything like that. And if you have other bets that you would like to share with the YouTube page, please be sure to just leave it down in the comments down below, so that way people can see it. And maybe it'll be something I could even consider too, for future videos and everything, because I'm always looking for feedback. I'm always looking for improvements on my video. So again, we have 2 people that joined so far, and to those 2 people that are joining in right now, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, it really does mean a lot when I do have people come on here and everything. I know it's never the most ideal times for a lot of people to be coming in on a podcast, but it's good to have some people be able to tune in and be able to listen in as far as what I have to offer to them. So week one's finally here. Like I said, off season has been very weird. It's been very interesting. It's been very vocal for a lot of players and a lot of teams and everything. Big contracts, especially. We know the big contracts with Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. We know how about the draft that came up this year. So there's a lot of things to really consider going into this season. So we're also going to kind of talk about those things tonight for each of these matchups. So without further ado, let's talk about the first matchup of the night, which will be happening in less than 24 hours, and I'll pull my camera down just a little bit more so that way you can see me. And the first game to really talk about tonight is the Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs. So this spread is actually going to be a lot smaller, I feel like. And the reasons why, in case you haven't been keeping up with the news, but Travis Kelce is suffering a knee injury. He hyperextended his knee, as it was reported yesterday. So chances of him playing for the tomorrow night's opening game is very slim. And as far as without playing Chris Jones on the defensive end of the football, which I do believe that Kansas City's defense is actually going to improve by a lot this year. I think they really ramped up on a lot of really good corners and good secondary players and safeties. I think the defense will be a lot better. But I think the biggest problem with missing Chris Jones is he's your most consistent pass rush, which is something that Kansas City hasn't had for quite a while since as long as Chris Jones has gotten here. Um, but without Chris Jones, we're not really sure how this defense is going to play. But as far as secondary players go and corners and everything like that, I think you would think they still would play up to par. They still would play better. But without having your best defensive player, man, that always hurts. And as far as the offensive side of the ball, there's going to be a lot of questions of who is Patrick Mahomes' number one guy going to be? We all know Patrick Mahomes is going to play just fine. But without Travis Kelce, the next man has to step up. So we could see Kansas City run the ball a lot more than we've seen them within the past 5-6 years since Mahomes has been in the league. That's something very predictable. I think Isaiah Pacheco will be a good volume for the offense for Kansas City this year. Sky Moore could be another good addition too. That could have a nice solid season for this team. That could be consistent, could be good for Patrick Mahomes in case one of his other guys that he heavily relies on and trusts. That could definitely happen. Kadarius Toney, a lot of questions about him. I think he's kind of a showboat based off of what we've heard about, things off of what we've seen, and maybe that's just me being a bitter Giants fan that lost him and, dealing with a lot of drama with him there, similar to kind of what we saw with Odell Beckham. But he still should be utilized in this offense this year as the guy that you would see as like a Deebo Samuel or Kendrick Bourne and things like that. So I think their offense and their offensive line is still pretty steadily good, which I think won't really be an issue. It's just more or less trying to figure out who's going to be that guy that's going to step up in Kelce's not departure, but from his absence of this particular game. So that's one side to look at it. Detroit, though, they're going to be dealing with, obviously you got Jared Goff, who is coming off of a really nice season from a year ago. You don't have DeAndre Swift anymore, but you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who you drafted this season. You also have David Montgomery that could be splitting some time as well. You have some really good receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're not going to have Jameson Williams due to suspension, but you have a really nice offensive line. I think your offensive line for Detroit is actually the best offensive line in the league. And I also believe that you have the best offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson by far. I think he's arguably probably the best offensive coordinator in this league right now that's done a phenomenal job being able to use Jared Goff and be able to come up with a good system offense that works best for him. And that's really why that he's been so successful since he's been with Detroit. So as far as both the teams go, this is a really hard one to really pick. I feel that both teams have a legitimate shot. I think Detroit really has a legitimate shot of winning this particular game because I think they can take advantage of some key missing pieces like Chris Jones, for example. If you're not getting that consistent pass rush in from Kansas City, there's a good chance that Jared Goff will be explosive and make explosive plays. As we know, Amon-Ra St. Brown is really fast. The run game, while Jahmyr Gibbs is a first rounder from this year's draft, we're still kind of in question as far as how is he going to get himself started? How is he going to really play as a rookie and things like that? So a lot of questions about the run game, but I think they can, with Ben Johnson, I think they'll be able to figure that out, and I think they can play just fine. But I think a lot of it really is going to come on the defensive side. So while Detroit may have fixed some of their defensive problems from a year ago, I still think even without Travis Kelce, there's a good chance that they still will struggle against Patrick Mahomes. I just don't know without you're going to have Aiden Hutchinson there, who was a, first rounder from last year of 2022, and he was excellent last year for Detroit and really their best defensive player. But it was very inconsistent last year. And I think their run defense is also still has yet to be proven. So there's a lot of questions about how this defense is going to format this year. And especially if they can really take advantage of the missing pieces on offense, like a Travis Kelce. Can they be able to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes? Can they contain him within the pocket? Because we know that's not a ideal spot for Patrick Mahomes to be able to throw from the pocket. We know that. We've seen Patrick Mahomes play for a long time now, quite a long time. He's like that veteran leader now that knows the game well enough already. He's already won 2 Super Bowl rings. So what do we have to do to slow him down? So the defensive coordinator for Detroit is going to have to figure out these things before tomorrow night. So as far as like Travis Kelce goes, we know right now his playing time is in question right now. So we're not exactly sure that he's going to be playing. Which is probably going to be a hardcore no. I don't think he's going to be playing, especially if it's a hyper extended knee injury that he's suffering right now. But I still think Kansas City is still probably slightly the better team, even without Kelce. I still think Andy Reid is more of it as a really, 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 really outstanding offensive genius. That I think him and Mahomes have had this coach and quarterback duo that can prevail through anything. Whereas Detroit, I still kind of have yet to really see that. So while I think Detroit's season is very high this year, I think there's a lot to be excited for this year, and I think this game will be competitive. But I think Kansas City still kind of takes this win because they're at home. That's number one thing, and that's going to be very difficult for Detroit to be able to do. I don't think they're going to be able to win on the road week one against Kansas City, who's been successful in week one for only God knows how many years they've been winning in week one. So it's kind of hard for me to kind of pick against Kansas City. I'll be rooting against Kansas City because I'd like to see Detroit win. But I think if you're going to make a safe bet here, if you want like your straight up picks, I still think Kansas City's going to win. But as I was watching from the bottom line view earlier before I started this live podcast, wouldn't be the worst idea to be able to go ahead and take the plus 6.5 right now, as I know right now, or unless we find out tomorrow that it drops, wouldn't be the worst idea to be able to go ahead and take that plus 6.5 or 4.5 or 2.5, whatever it's going to be. I just don't think that's the worst idea in the world, too. But it's a game that I'm probably going to be staying away from just because I feel that there's a lot to really talk about with this one, and there's really a lot of things to kind of think about that you may not have enough time to be able to bet. So I'll take Kansas City straight up, but I think Detroit will. I think they'll do well against the spread depending on what it is and the situation that it's in, and that's kind of hard to say. But I'll take Kansas City. They're going to win the straight up, and I'll take Detroit to take it with either plus 6.5 or whatever the spread may be. I think it just varies on that. So that's the first game. That's Thursday night football for you tomorrow. Well, actually, it will be aired on NBC tomorrow night at 8:20. So I got to figure out who am I starting at quarterback. I'm in 4 fantasy football leagues this year, and I have Jared Goff and a few of them, and one of them I have to pick between him and Daniel Jones. So I gotta have to figure that out before tomorrow night. But moving on to the next game, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are favored by 2.5. Joe Burrow is coming off of a calf injury, which a lot of people really don't know exactly. Like, how is he going to play in Week 1? Is his injury is it sustainable? Is it very susceptible to making like the big time plays that we saw from last year and that sort of thing? And how will this defense play without Von Bell and Jesse Bates? So losing your 2 best safeties, I think, is always a big blow on any team that you play. I think that's definitely a big blow on defense. But your defense is still very solid. They may not be as good as they were last year with those 2 safeties at the helm, but you still have a pretty good defensive line. Like Sam Hubbard, I think, will still have a phenomenal year and get a lot of pressure in as well. And the corners, too, I also think they are also underrated. You lost Eli Apple, which really isn't much. I mean, Eli Apple really wasn't consistent with Cincinnati there, but I think their defense is still solid. Offensively, they didn't lose a single piece. In fact, I think their offense is just as good, if not better, this year. I think they've done a much better job improving this offensive line. Orlando Brown playing on the line is also going to be like really, really something different that I think that could be just like their missing piece from the Bengals. They could be just that offensive piece away from winning a Super Bowl. And I think that's really good. We already know about the receivers they have. We know about the run game. We know about the quarterback. So what does Cleveland have? Well, Cleveland has just as good of receivers as Cincinnati. Probably not as good, but maybe I think they're kind of like similar to maybe other teams in the league that are like kind of flying under the radar, but I think they could really have like a breakout year with Amari Cooper being your number one receiver. I think that really works out well. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, you have David Njoku, you have Nick Chubb, who is arguably the best rusher in the NFL, and you have Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson's thing as far as playing quarterback, this will be his first, hopefully for Cleveland fans, will be his first full season with the Browns this year. Last year, we understand how difficult it was for Watson to get himself going due to suspension, and he was out for several weeks. It was like, I think it was like 12 or 13 weeks. And then coming back towards the end of the season where the Brown season was at that point kind of shot. Let's just be honest there. I think the Browns actually could be a lot better this year. I think their defense actually has put in a lot of work. I think their defense should be a lot better than what they were last year. I kind of still have my questions as far as their defensive coordinator. I don't know if their defensive coordinator is that guy that can get to Super Bowls or perform well against like really good teams. Like, for example, they play Cincinnati twice or Baltimore twice or Pittsburgh twice. Like, that's still in question for me. But I think in week one, Cleveland is probably the better team. I think they're more healthier. Their offensive line, like Detroit, arguably the best offensive line in the league. I'm going to take the Browns to win this one. I think the Bengals are, obviously, I think the Bengals are the better team. I will be honest with you there. The Bengals are a better team, but Joe Burrow is coming off of an injury. So I have a lot of questions about that. And you also got to keep in mind, too, that Cleveland right now owns Joe Burrow and the Bengals. That's just a straight up fact. Whereas Joe Burrow may have won last year towards the end of the year against the Browns. When you take a look at one of their other games, they absolutely got smoked by the Browns. Like, that game was not even remotely close to what it really would have been. Now, I think this year it's going to be a lot closer because I still think there's going to be some things that both teams are going to be trying to figure out, and there's schemes that they're going to be trying to figure out. Cleveland will want to run the ball. They'll want to try out Deshaun Watson and really test him to see if he can still play and if he was worth the money that they're paying him. Whereas Cincinnati's already banking it and saying that they could go to the Super Bowl, which I think they have a legitimate shot. That I think the Bengals are the best team in the NFL right now. I personally think they're better than Kansas City and Buffalo put together. That's just my honest opinion. I think they're the most complete team that I feel like I would trust them the most right now to win a Super Bowl. But week one, you're playing a division rival in state. It's tough to be able to do that. I'm going with the Browns. I think the Browns come out on top. Think it's going to be a very close game. And I'll take the Browns at 2.5. I think that's a pretty good bet right there because I think they can do just enough to be able to cover that spread. And I think they're a bit more ready to start the season than Cincinnati is due to Joe Burrow's calf injury. That's just my honest opinion there. So, all right, next game we're going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about this one too much, is the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens right now are favored by 10 points, which shouldn't be a shock to anybody. The Ravens have put in a lot of offseason work in this year, which has been so unbelievably well done by the coaching staff, from the administrators, from GM to owner. Like, they've done everything that they possibly could do to keep Lamar Jackson. They signed him that extension that he's been begging for. They finally have given him his new toys to play around with besides Mark Andrews. He now has Odell Beckham Jr., and he's got Zay Flowers, who they drafted from Boston College this season. The Texans have two of the best picks in the first round of C.J. Stroud, who will be a rookie starting week one, and Will Anderson as their edge rusher on the defensive side of things, which I think Will Anderson has a pretty legitimate shot of being able to probably win rookie defensive player of the year this year. But I'm still going with the Ravens. Now, this might sound a little crazy. I'm not always the most high on the Ravens. I think they are, at times, I think they're a bit overrated. I think they're overhyped on a lot of things. But I think this year, for whatever reason, I'm kind of buying into the Ravens scheme this year and Lamar Jackson, where I haven't been in years past. And I think a lot of that is because Greg Roman is gone, which is the most important thing of this Ravens team, is that they had to get rid of Greg Roman, who was their worst offensive coordinator that they've probably have ever had as long as the Ravens have been a part of the NFL. And also, they have a lot to work with now. Now that Lamar Jackson is finally healthy, J.K. Dobbins is finally healthy, and Gus Edwards, and a pretty stellar offensive line, I think will be a lot better. This will probably be the best offensive line that Lamar has played under at center. And I just think they're just ready to rock and roll. They could be a dark horse to go to the Super Bowl this year. The Texans, I believe the Texans are actually flying under the radar, where I don't think they're going to win, probably not going to win more than 4 or 5 games this season, but I think the Texans, in terms of what they do have, their talent really is not that bad. I think the Texans are better than what they've been for like the last couple of years under a series of coaches and quarterbacks after Deshaun Watson, like a Tyrod Taylor who played there for a year, and Davis Mills, who was also splitting time. And last year, this is probably a better team than what people give them credit for. I think their defense is definitely being slept on, which if I were any other NFL team playing against the Texans, I wouldn't sleep on this defense. I mean, you have Stingley, you have Will Anderson as a rookie too, which I think will be an exciting matchup there. You have great secondary players, corners. Maybe your defensive line is a bit lacking, and maybe Will Anderson will probably put some momentum into that. But I think your corners, like I think this is a defense that's like really tough to throw the ball on, and I think that's exactly what it's going to be this year. And then as far as like offensively goes, whereas like I feel like CJ Stroud will struggle this year. Um, I think he probably will have one of the better years out of the 3 main rookie quarterbacks that are starting this year. But I think that the pieces that he has around him are, solid, decent. Dalton Schultz, Robert Woods, Mitchie, you have Nico Collins, Damian Pierce, Devin Singletary, and you have a pretty decent offensive line. Not great, but you have a pretty decent offensive line. So this could be a better Texans year. I think you have a lot to play for the future, and I think you will be better this season. I think you will get better for the future. But I think this is really hard to start your rookie debut against the Ravens, who, are many tiers above you. So I'm going with the Ravens. I also would take the minus 10 for the Ravens. I really think this team could definitely go ahead and win by 10 easily, because I think the Ravens are better. They're ready. They're more ready to go. Whereas like the Texans, it will take them a little bit to get acclimated, but they will get better later on in the year. So I will take the Ravens to win. I will take them with the spread at 10. All right, next you've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Minnesota Vikings. So last I checked, the Vikings are are favored by 6 here. This is being played in Minnesota. Tampa Bay, actually, some people have been saying that Tampa Bay is going to drop this year big time. Baker Mayfield, who they got in the draft, and then you got Kyle Trask, who's never taken an NFL snap. I think Baker Mayfield, and based off of what I've heard from the training camp and mini camp, from the media and podcasts that I've heard and everything, it sounds like that the Bucs are actually pretty good, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still have good pieces. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, a good offensive line. Rashad White, who had some playing time last year, which I think he'll be better now that Leonard Fournette's out there. A tight end room is pretty decent, and then your defense is probably going to be better than what it was last year. Tristan Wirfs, Devin White, Levante David's still there. You still have a really solid defense with a really, really, really nice defensive line and secondary players and everything like that. So I think as long as this team can stay healthy, I think they could actually surprise some people and be a lot better than what people expect. And Baker Mayfield, from what I've seen and what I've heard from other newscasts and everything like that, it sounds like that he's been doing pretty well. That's why he's the starting quarterback. The Vikings, on the other hand, where their offense is going to be explosive still, maybe a slight step back in the run game, but I think their defense is still pretty bad. So this is going to be a lot closer of a game than people would think. So I'm still going to take the Vikings, but I'm not going to take the spread. And I would avoid betting on this game because I don't trust this defense where, as much as I like Brian Flores, as much as I think that his defensive scheme is going to help the Vikings out in some ways, even with the lack of talent that they have, especially now that they don't have their best pass rusher anymore and things like that, or their best secondary players and safeties like Patrick Peterson. They don't have that sort of thing. But maybe they could get better throughout the year. Maybe they could get better and get themselves ready under Brian Flores because he's always done a pretty nice job with containing defenses and preparing them for big games. So maybe they could improve and get better later on in the season, but I just don't see it being that way right now. And that's why I'm suggesting to you right now to not take the spread because I just don't think that they're quite there. I just don't think their defense is definitely there from a talent standpoint. Now, as far as the offense, like I said, I think they're still going to be very explosive. The run game will probably take a slight step back. You don't have Dalvin Cook anymore. You have Alexander Madison, who will be taking the bulk of the carries, but it's also in question of like how is he going, how himself is going to stay healthy. So I will take the Vikings to win. I take the Vikings to win the straight up, and it's tough to play in Minnesota, but it's a game that I would avoid. I would avoid betting on. I just don't think it's a game that I personally would recommend anybody betting on just because of how bad this defense really is. And if you don't believe me, go watch their film, go research them, and you'll see what I mean for that. So, all right, next game is another divisional game. It is the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are a team that drafted Bijan Robinson, and Bryce Young is going to get the starting role in Carolina as the number one overall pick for Carolina. What do I think about these two teams? I think both of these teams are on the rise. I'm going to be completely honest. I really think both teams are on the rise. I don't think they're quite there yet. I don't think either one of these teams are really quite there to really win the division of the NFC South, which probably is the worst division in the NFL right now. But they're both teams that are on the rise and they're building and they're improving every single day. The offensive line for the Panthers, as we saw in preseason, was very much in question. Bryce Young had some really nice moments, but if you don't have the protection for Bryce Young, he's not going to do very well. That's just a straight up fact. If you've played football, if you watched football for a lot of years and you understand the game, you understand that the quarterback needs to be protected by the offensive line. And that's not coming up with any real excuses for them on why they don't play well, but don't expect Bryce Young to go in there right away in week one to win on the road and play lights out. That's just not going to happen. So Frank Reich is the coach for Carolina, who's a very underrated hire. I don't think enough people really have credited him this offseason of what he's been able to do, what the players that he's been able to pick up, and both a mixture of a veteran standpoint and drafting or what he drafted in this year's draft. So I don't think he's really gotten enough credit for that. So the Panthers are a team for the future, and I think they will play better as the year goes on. But this is a tough team to play against the Falcons. I've been saying it pretty much all offseason about the Falcons, and I'll say it again. I think their defense is probably at least top 20 this year. I think their defense and their pass rush is going to be the best pass rush that I think I probably have ever seen from the Falcons. When you get Calais Campbell and you get Jesse Bates, whereas like the Panthers have the other Bengals safety of Von Bell, when you have a lot of those players and your defense is playing like lights out all the time and you're getting a lot of turnovers, you're getting a lot of stops, this could be a really tough defense. Now, as far as the Falcons quarterback situation goes with Desmond Ridder, I'm not the biggest Desmond Ridder believer, in my honest opinion. I'm really not. which I don't think Arthur Smith is going to be asking Desmond Ritter to do a lot of things in week one. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I think Bijan Robinson's going to have a nice season. I think he'll have a good rookie season there. He'll also be splitting some time with Tyler Algier, Cordarrelle Patterson, who's still there, who's also aging, but I think he still can be complementary to this offense. A pretty decent offensive line. I think Drake London will be pretty successful this year. I think he's a sleeper in fantasy. So I think the Falcons are, maybe a couple of seasons away from making noise. And same with the Panthers. I think they're just maybe another season or two. Give them some time. They could be a lot better. So, but for now, I'm going to take the safe bet. I will take the Falcons to win as the home team, the quarterback that has the more experience, the coach who's been successful with running the football, which we'll see how the Panthers match up with that. And I will take the Falcons to win the 3.5. Whereas, I feel like this game will be very close. It'll probably be low scoring. We're probably not going to see a lot of offense going on. But I think the Falcons starting this game outright, with running the ball and coming up with a good scheme, and with Frank Reich still adjusting to Carolina and still adjusting to the players that he's working with, and not having to go through a series of quarterbacks in Indianapolis. I think that's just the way that it is. So take the Falcons. I'll take them, and I would definitely take them at 3.5 as the home team. All right, next we've got the Arizona Cardinals at the Washington Commanders. So we already know about the Cardinals, worst team in the NFL. No Kyler Murray, no more DeAndre Hopkins. The offensive line is suspect. The run game is probably going to be slow this year. Marquise Brown probably is your best offensive player at this point right now. Arizona is going to be starting Josh Dobbs to start out the season in week one. And that already is going to tell you what it is. And defensively, no more J.J. Watt, basically Buda Baker. That's it. So the Commanders, on the other side, has a lot of talent. Their defensive line, probably arguably top 10. Their corners, somewhere up there. Their offense, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, which I think Jahan Dotson is going to have a nice breakout year in his sophomore year. And then you have Sam Howell. Now, Sam Howell played one game last year where nobody really knew exactly how he was going to do. In that last game after they benched Heineke and Carson Wentz and everything like that, nobody really knew exactly or expected him to really come out and play the way that he did last year. And, that last game, he looked pretty good. He really did look good against arguably the best pass rush in the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys. So I think the Commanders have a lot of talent, and I've been kind of saying that they have a pretty sleeper team this year that could compete with a lot of teams and call a lot of close games and everything. So I'm going to take them. I'm going to take them to win. I'm going to take Washington to win, and I'm going to take them to win at the spread of 7. I think that's very well possible to do. The Cardinals are playing for the future. I think this could be the year where they could draft number 1 overall of Caleb Williams. That's really what it looks like at this point, at this time right now. So I don't expect the Cardinals to really do anything good this year. So I will take the Commanders, and I think I will take them to cover the spread. I just think they're a better team, better quarterback, so to speak. Probably better coaching, maybe. That's also kind of a stretch. But I trust Washington a lot more. All right, guys. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 5-point favorites to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, I feel like, are going to be one of the worst teams this year. I like Anthony Richardson a lot, and I was really happy that the Colts decided to go ahead and finally draft a quarterback and not waste it on another piece that they don't need. But Anthony Richardson is going to struggle as an offense, as a quarterback this year, as a rookie. I think that's just the name of the game. Now, do I think it's right that he's starting in week 1? Yes, I do, because I think if you draft a quarterback this early in the first round, he's already a ready to go guy. He's ready to go. Let him take some lumps, see what he can do with this offense, and so on and so forth. No Jonathan Taylor. That's also going to hurt the ground game. So maybe Deion Jackson will be their next man up that they'll have to rely on, or they'll have to rely on Anthony Richardson's running ability to be able to do much. Michael Pittman's still there, very good receiver. Not great anymore, but maybe this could be a year that he could be better this year. Alec Pierce was a good pick last year. You have a lot of tight ends that probably could see a lot more time this year, but I don't really trust a lot of them, like Mo Alley Cox. An offensive line that was definitely overpaid last year by a long shot, but I guess they could be better, but I don't know if I really trust that. Defensively, they lost a lot of talent. Stephon Gilmore's no longer there. That definitely hurts a lot. Maybe their defensive line is still good, and maybe they can get it still a pass rush going. But once that quarterback is let out of the quarterback's hands from the opposing team, who knows? Who knows what really the corners are going to be able to do? I just don't think they're at Stephon Gilmore level. So the Colts are in a lot of question. Jacksonville, however, I believe is the opposite of that. I think Calvin Ridley is going to come back this year, and I think he's going to do really well. I think he's a dark horse for fantasy football. So if you've already drafted all your fantasy teams, I hope you picked up Calvin Ridley, because I really think he's going to have a breakout year and have the NFL pay him after missing all that time last year from the gambling situation that he had. I'm going with Jacksonville to win. I'm just being honest. Jacksonville's the overall better team. Trevor Lawrence looking like a franchise quarterback already. He is something really special that we saw from last year. Really nice offensive weapons, really good run game. Decent offensive line, maybe. We'll see. And then you have Doug Peterson at the helm. So I trust Jacksonville. I'm going to take them to win. I will take them to cover the 5. I feel like it should be really, honestly, a lot more than 5 points, because I think that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to win by a lot more than 5 points. So I will take Jacksonville to win and cover the spread. All right, next we've got the San Francisco 49ers, who are 2.5-point favorites to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are home. I'm taking, well, first of all, let me kind of start off with this way, okay? The 49ers just paid Nick Bosa today. So that kind of was the big question impact in terms of how everything was going to go. Like the beginning part of the season was more in question of which quarterback was playing. Was it Trey Lance? Was it going to be Sam Darnold? Was it going to be Brock Purdy? Nobody really knew what it was. Everybody kind of just assumed it was between Darnold and Trey Lance. Darnold is there. Trey Lance is now a backup with Dallas. So now it's just down to Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold. So right now, Brock Purdy is back, and he is going to be starting in week 1. This is going to be probably the best defense besides the Eagles last year and the Cowboys. This will be one of the toughest defenses that he has yet to face. George Kittle, we still in question if he's going to be able to play this week or not, just because of his injury. He's been injury prone over the last couple of seasons. Deebo Samuel's still there. Could be better this year. Could be better, but we don't really know. McCaffrey, still going to be McCaffrey, but everyone's saying that he could take a slight step back this year, which I honestly could see. Offensive line, good, maybe, I think. I don't know. But their defense is still very solid. Even without Nick Bosa, I still think their defense is still very good. Pittsburgh, on the other side, offense that I think is being slept on. I think there's a lot of great pieces on offense that's not being talked about, like the George Pickens wide receiver pick from last year. I mean, like, come on. George Pickens, guys. He's going to have a breakout year. Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett is actually going to have a nice sophomore year. I really do. I think it took him a little bit to really get himself going, to get himself acclimated, to get himself adjusted to the offense, and I thought he did really well towards the end of the year, and I think he's going to pick up of where he last left off from last year, and I think he could be even better. So, 2 really good teams, 2 really tough defensive teams, and as long as TJ Watt, Hightower, and Minka Fitzpatrick, like, as long as all of those players on the defensive side for Pittsburgh wins, as far as like their defense goes, I think Pittsburgh wins. I think they're going to win week 1. I think this is like one of those games that Pittsburgh either wins or they lose to certain teams. And I think while San Francisco, I think, is better on paper, I think Pittsburgh finds a way to win. And I think I'm going to go with that. I think the Steelers are going to win at home. Maybe cover the spread, maybe go at plus 2.5, maybe. Still kind of a bit of question, but it wouldn't be the worst idea because I think the Steelers always find ways to shock the world. And I think this is like their perfect opportunity. Last year, they shocked the world by beating the Bengals, and nobody saw that coming. I think the Steelers are going to be able to shock the world again, where I think they're going to be better this year than what they were last year. Maybe not as good as like the Browns or the Ravens, any of those wild card teams. But I think they're a team that I think is flying under the radar. I don't think enough people are really giving them the respect that they deserve. So I will take the Steelers to win. I really do. And I think they have the better opportunity to win, especially if they're at home with the terrible towels, swirling around and everything like that. Like, I just think that that's the better way. And if this game was being played in San Francisco, would be a much different scenario. But that's not the case. So I'm taking the Steelers to win, and I would take them to cover it at 2.5. But don't get me wrong, Niners fans. I think the Niners are going to be good this year. I really do believe that they're going to be good. But I think the Steelers always find those ways to win, like those upset games, and I think this is one of them that they win. Next, we got the Tennessee Titans. So the Tennessee Titans and the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints are favored by 3. Derek Carr, who is now officially a New Orleans Saint, will be getting his first ever snap not first ever snap because he played in preseason a little bit, but in his debut with the Saints, this will be his first regular season start with the Saints. So they are favored by 3. Alvin Kamara, he's suspended for 3 weeks, which means that they're going to have to rely on Jamal Williams to be able to carry the bulk of the carries. Chris Olave, really good receiver. I think he's going to have a nice year this year. Michael Thomas, as far as we know, he's still playing, but that could definitely change at any time. Defensively, they're still solid. Marshawn Lattimore still there. Cam Jordan, maybe a little bit older, but I think there's still a defense that can still play. Dennis Allen, still kind of a bit of a question mark if he can coach in this league or not. So, yeah, the Saints are kind of a team that, a lot of people are kind of questioning on, especially now with Derek Carr at the helm. And we kind of saw what he played last year, and it wasn't exactly pretty, but it wasn't the worst quarterback performance of last year. I think that was kind of more of a Russell Wilson thing. The Tennessee Titans offensive line's pretty bad. Ryan Tannehill still at the helm. Derrick Henry still there, but they also acquired DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason, which will pass out their passing game a lot. I think he definitely is a good mentor for Treylon Burks and maybe their tight end as well, too, who could probably step up this year. Their defense is still very good. Kevin Byard is still there. I think he's still one of the best safeties in the NFL. So both teams that I feel like are very neck and neck with one another. I feel like that there's a lot to really kind of unleash here. There's a lot of things that I feel like could be unlocked about both teams, that one of these teams could be exposed this year. But there's a lot of like talk about the Titans that they jumped up a couple of spots in some people's rankings because of that DeAndre Hopkins signing. And maybe that will work out. Maybe it will. I don't know. I still feel kind of strongly about it. I think they paid him way too much money for one to get him. And I think this wasn't a team that if D-Hop was still looking for a team that was Super Bowl ready, I just don't think this is the team that's ready for that. And I don't think the Saints really would have been ready either, but they're probably at least like a step or two away from winning a Super Bowl. But Mike Vrabel, got to give him credit where credit is earned. He's always put together the best team that he's had the last couple of seasons, even when they've been injured, like a Derrick Henry season. Everybody thought they were going to go downhill, and look what happened. They went 12-5. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they lost to the Bengals, unfortunately. So, Mike Vrabel is an elite coach, and I've always liked Mike Vrabel. I've always liked his camaraderie with the teams, and I've always liked his charisma. I think he's very good for this team. I think he gets the best of what he can. Dennis Allen, on the other hand, not so much. But who would I rather take here is the bigger question here. And I've always liked the Titans, and I've always liked Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry in week 1 is not exactly the Derrick Henry that you see like midway through the season. So I'm going to take the Saints. I think the Saints are a team that are just good enough to win their division for one. And these early season games, this will be one of their toughest tests that they have to win in order to win their division. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to be able to show everybody that they belong in the playoffs, they deserve to win this division, and that sort of thing. So I will take the Saints to win, and I will take them to cover the spread. I think it's going to be a very close, low scoring game, like the Steelers and the 49ers game. I think it's going to be very close. I think it's probably going to be at least like a 13-10 to maybe a 16-10 type of game. I just feel like it's going to be a low scoring game. You're not going to see a lot going on, and maybe you'll see some early turnovers happen as well in this game. So I'll take the Saints. I'll take my man Derek Carr, and hopefully, things work out for them this year. And I think it will. I think they'll be just good enough to win their division, just be good enough to make the playoffs. But as far as making a deep run goes, I just don't see that happening. Next, you got another division rival here with the Las Vegas Raiders, and you've got the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are favored right now by 3.5. I don't understand why they're favored by so much, specifically because, well, Denver's beat up right now. I think their offense is, very, very, very subpar. I'm not a huge fan of this offense, and I think everybody kind of knows this already. They've already lost a lot of their receivers, for one. Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, and Jerry Jeudy's out for 4 weeks. So 3 of your receivers gone right there. So who do you have left? You have Cortland Sutton, who I think is washed. And then you got Mims, who was a rookie. So we don't know how he can play. And maybe their tight ends could play better. Who knows? Russell Wilson was atrocious last year. We don't really need to keep talking about that because we know how bad he was last year. We know how bad this team was offensively. Sean Payton, however, I feel that his comments that he made earlier in the offseason about Nathaniel Hackett, I feel like this is like a game that's going to go ahead and bite him back after making those comments. And I just think they're so beat up right now, it's not even funny. They will keep this game competitive. I think Sean Payton will keep this game and this team competitive. But I just don't see them winning a lot of games, especially in this AFC where you have your Chiefs, you have your Chargers, you have the Bills, the Bengals, the Jets, the Dolphins. I just don't see the Broncos really being up to that challenge with any of those teams this year. The Raiders are similar, but they're the opposite of the Broncos. The Broncos have a good defense. The Broncos defense with Zach Allen, Patrick Surtain, and everything, their defense is solid. It may not be the greatest defense, but I think it's at least a top 15. Like, you kind of have to give it the respect that it rightfully earns because they've been able to put together, that defense has really put them in a lot of games and really have put them in good potential game-winning drives, and their offense just could not be able to pull through. So that's why the Broncos lost a lot of those games last year, is because of how bad the play calling was and how bad the offense was as a whole, and Russell Wilson too. Whereas the Raiders, I feel the Raiders are the opposite. I think their offense is very good, whereas their defense is still a lot of questions. Now, as far as their defensive line goes with Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, and rookie Tyree Wilson, they could be better, but they also have a lot of question marks too. There's still not enough depth in case like any players get hurt, like Marcus Peters, who they signed in the offseason, or Chandler Jones, who, if he does not work out for this deal, like what do you do at that point? Their offense, I believe, is better. I think their offense with Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, all their tight ends like Austin Hooper, what's his name? I can't even think of his name. Michael Mayer. And then you have Jimmy Garoppolo, which you have to hope and pray that Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy this year. Otherwise, this could be a very long season for the Raiders. I'm going to take the Raiders to win. I like the Raiders. I like them better than the Broncos personally. I think they have more of their stuff together than the Broncos do. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a really good game manager that I think he will figure out ways to be able to beat the Broncos. And I think they're just a very beatable team. So I'm going to take the Raiders to win. As far as the spread goes, Take Denver at 3.5. That's not the worst idea because they are the home team, but wouldn't be the worst idea. Wouldn't be opposed if you did 3.5 plus 3.5 for the Raiders too. But I think the Raiders right now, based off of what I've seen in the offseason and based off of like what I've been seeing through the sources and the roster and everything like that, I just think the Raiders are the overall better team. So I will take the Raiders to win straight up, and maybe the Broncos 3.5 because I think that is pretty legitimate. I think that is reasonable to take them because they are the home team. Next, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the New England Patriots. The Patriots, this will be Tom Brady's return game, so to speak. Not exactly as a quarterback, unfortunately for them. But this will be like the game that they will be honoring Tom Brady, which is interesting because this is the last team that Tom Brady played in the Super Bowl that he lost to. The other two Super Bowls, when he played against the Rams and he played against the Chiefs, he won both of them. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of worked out. Not much to really talk about this game, but the Eagles, I feel like, are just about the same as what they were last year. They might be slightly worse defensively because they lost Gardner Johnson. So that definitely takes a big blow into your defense. But offensively, you still have pretty much every single piece here. You've probably lost a couple pieces. Like Miles Sanders is gone and is at Carolina now. So you have some split room there with DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, both running backs that could be sleepers this year, but also their health is also in question too. An offensive line is still very good. I think their offensive line is probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in the league. But their defense also takes a big hit too with losing C.J. Johnson. So I think they will take a slight back there. The Patriots, however, the Patriots defense is always very good. They're still phenomenal as it is with Matthew Judon, other players that they also have as well. And then offensively, they're kind of in question. They could be better. I think they should be better with Bill O'Brien at the helm and being their OC. Last year was a very disastrous year for Mac Jones and company because they didn't have an offensive coordinator calling the right plays. So Matt Patricia was calling it. Obviously, that didn't work out. We all saw what happened at the end. But I think this is a new year, New England Patriots team that I think is going to be fresh out of the preseason with a new OC back, so to speak, of Bill O'Brien. I think Mac Jones will come out and play in year 3. Their weapons, I feel, are also being underrated too. Like Juju, not many people liked that signing, but I liked Juju Smith-Schuster signing. I felt that was the most appropriate. If you weren't going to get DeAndre Hopkins, which was very unlikely because Bill Belichick wasn't going to go ahead and pay DeAndre for the amount of money that he was asking for. That just wasn't in the cards. But you have Juju that is productive. He was productive with Kansas City. He was also productive with Pittsburgh. So you can't sit here and tell me that he is not a number one receiver because I think he could play as a number one receiver. I really do. So I think that will play into factor well. And then you have Ramondre Stevenson and you have Zeke Elliott splitting some time as well there too. So I'm a little bit skeptical about Zeke Elliott. I don't know if I like that signing as much, but time will tell as the season starts. But their defense is going to keep them in this game. Normally, the Patriots defense struggles against running quarterbacks, and that's exactly what Jalen Hurts is. But this could be that game where maybe the Patriots defense plays well, and as week 1 happens, a lot of strange things happen. So the Patriots at home, Tom Brady being there, could be a lot of spark for the Patriots to win. But I'm going to spoil the surprise for everybody, and I will go with the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game on the road, taking them at -4 because I think their overall talent on this team for the Eagles is just much better than the Patriots, honestly. But as far as coaching staff wise goes, maybe that will be a bit of in question. But I will take the Eagles to win. I'll take them to cover the spread as well. I don't have to spend too much time about this game. We already know what it is. The Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are going to win this game flat out. Who else do the Rams have? Cooper Kupp is already out for week 1. That's already a loss right there. If you don't have Cooper Kupp, you're not winning this game because offensively, you just don't have any more pieces that can step up to the plate. Maybe Van Jefferson can make a couple catches, but nothing really spectacular. Matthew Stafford, injury prone. What's his season like this year? Cam Akers, overrated. Offensive line's trash. Tight ends, not very good. Defensively, Aaron Donald, not much to really talk about there. So I don't really want to waste too much time on this particular game, guys. I'm just being honest here. The Seahawks have done a lot of things this offseason and in the draft too, which were kind of interesting things that they did in the draft. I thought they were kind of interesting things that they did. They drafted another running back. They were going to draft a quarterback, but they never did. I think they like Geno Smith, and I think they're going to stick with him because I think Geno Smith did very well last year. And I think if you were to go ahead and draft a quarterback in this particular draft, I think it would have been very disrespectful to how much that Smith has done last year. So I think they really like him a lot. And I think they also like their rookie of Jackson Smith McJigma, or however you say his last name. So I will take the Seahawks to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I just have no high hopes for the Rams this season. Sorry, Rams fans. I don't see anything really going forth with that this year. All right, guys, we got about 4 more games left here. So the next game we got here is the Miami Dolphins at the Los Angeles Chargers, who are favored by 3. So both teams, they're coming off of very weird seasons, but, Tua with his whole concussion issues going on last year, the team could have probably won a lot more, but then they had to go from Teddy Bridgewater, that wasn't very good, and Skylar Thompson, who was just as bad. So you had to go through a little bit of a series of quarterbacks from last year after Tua went down. But you still have Tyreek Hill. You still have Jalen Waddle. You still have the 2 best wide receivers in the league. So, there's no reason why you couldn't win this game, right? Well, let's take a look at the Chargers. I think the Chargers' pass rush is a lot better this year, as long as they can stay healthy. Their corners and secondary players very underrated. Their pass rush, very underrated. Defensive line, very underrated. Offense, Justin Herbert. He can play, guys. I'm just so tired of the whole disrespect to Justin Herbert. I don't know what Justin Herbert has ever done to you personally, but Justin Herbert is a borderline elite quarterback. Have we not watched film on him recently and what he's been able to do since his 3 years with the Chargers? He's done nothing but amazing things. His arm is like a cannon. It's not his fault that his receivers of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen keeps getting hurt. That's not his fault. So you got to rely on Austin Eckler to keep making plays. And I think Austin Eckler is probably one of the best backs in this league. He's at least a top 5, in my opinion, at least. But other people may say opposite. And you still have a solid defense. You have still good secondary players. You also have good defensive line, and you have a decent offensive coordinator too, of Kellen Moore, who could be better this year, who could be a lot better fit for the Chargers than he was with the Cowboys. That's just my opinion. The Dolphins, as long as Tua can stay healthy, they could be pretty good this year too. I'm not gonna lie, I think they could be really good. They could be at least a playoff team, or they could finish above the Jets. Very well possible in the AFC East. So, kind of looking back on it, I don't really know. This is a really tough game to really pick. But I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think the Dolphins are going to keep it competitive. Don't get me wrong. They're going to keep it competitive. Tua will play really well. Tyreek Hill will have, somewhat of a nice game. But I think the Chargers secondary is going to come to play and be ready to go. I think they have done a phenomenal job last year. They played really well against the Dolphins and were able to kind of keep Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill contained. And I think that's going to it's going to be a similar thing that I think is going to happen again. And I think their defense with the Dolphins, I think is still very good, at least top 5. But if you're missing Jalen Ramsey, that's also a big blow there too. So Justin Herbert can take advantage of that. As long as his receivers can stay healthy. And then you drafted Quentin Johnson. You have Joshua Palmer still there. So they still have a lot of pieces that not enough people really talk about. So I'm going to go with the Chargers, my man Justin Herbert. And I probably will take them to win at 3. I think that's a pretty respectable spread and bet there because I think the Chargers have that opportunity. I think they'll be able to do that just fine. So I will take the Chargers to win and cover the spread. 3 more games, guys. Next, we got another division rival here. This is this is the oldest NFL rival here of the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. This game is being played in Chicago, and the Bears are favored by 1. Jordan Love is going to be making his very first NFL career start as a full-time starter. We've seen him play a couple of times the last 2 seasons. We've seen enough footage to say that this guy is going to be good. I'm throwing that out there right now. Nobody has to agree with me on that. Maybe consider it a hot take, but Jordan Love is, I think, NFL ready. You sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. You have really underrated and young players, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the backfield. Some really good tight ends. A nice offensive line, which is something that Green Bay has always done a really good job in terms of protecting their quarterback. Defense could also skyrocket this year, although I have a lot of questions about Joe Barry as their defensive coordinator. So, yeah, what else is there really to say? I think the Packers I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. I don't think they're necessarily as bad as people think. I don't think they're going to win the division. I think that goes to Detroit, but I think they're still going to be very competitive. Chicago, on the other hand, while they've done some things to fix up their team, I'm still not buying into the Justin Fields hype. Like, I like Justin Fields. I think he's a great person. I've always liked his style of how he plays quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson. He reminds me a lot of Michael Vick. His passing ability is also very much in question, but I think DJ Moore could probably change that. But it may not be. It may not be enough to make them go to the playoffs or win a division. I just don't think that is. And I think a lot of holes on defense also plays a lot of questioning here too. So I think it will be a very good game. I think it will be a very competitive game. I think it will be a very close game just due to how well these two teams really know each other. But I'm also going to take the safe bet, and I will take Chicago to win at home. I think the Bears are, not necessarily not saying that they're good or anything like that. I don't think they're bad, but I just don't think they're that great either. But with Jordan Love having to go to Chicago to start off his full-time years as playing quarterback, that's not an easy place to play. I think if anywhere else you go to play, you might be able to have a slight advantage, but Chicago's a tough place to play. We saw it last year with Trey Lance. It was very, very, very ugly. We've seen other quarterbacks that have struggled to play in Chicago. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, other quarterbacks that have Aaron Rodgers. Well, even though Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, so to speak, he still has struggled to play there. And Kirk Cousins also. Like, just ask any other opposing offense from Chicago, and just talk with them. And they will tell you exactly the same thing as I'm telling you. It's not an easy place to play. The environment is not the easiest to play in. And the fans are very rowdy. So that's why I got to go with the Bears. But I think Jordan Love is going to have a really nice season this year. I think the Packers will be better at some point later on in the season than the Bears. I just think that's definitely a possibility. So, I'm definitely not doubting the Packers, but I just don't think they're going to win right away in week 1, especially when you have a young quarterback like Jordan Love, who hasn't had that experience yet to play in Chicago. So I'll take the Bears to win. I'll take them to cover the spread at 1. I think that's reasonable. 2 more games left. We got Sunday Night Football with the Dallas Cowboys, who are 3.5-point favorites to the New York Giants. Now, the Giants, this is the first time the Giants have been playing on Sunday Night Football. Well, I guess they played them last year. I guess they played last year on Sunday Night Football. Did they? Yeah, they did. Okay. But they got to go play the Cowboys, a very rich tradition of football right here. Hardcore. 2 teams really know each other very well. 2 teams that absolutely hate each other. Probably more than the Giants and the Eagles do. But it's the Cowboys and the Giants. The Cowboys, what can I say about the Cowboys? I mean, I've been pretty high on them this year. Like, I really think the Cowboys, at times I've thought they were overrated, but I think this is maybe just their year to be able to make it to that next level, and it's all going to rely on Dak Prescott. Now, as far as the Cowboys trading up for Trey Lance, also was a big bit of question here too. This also puts in question of Dak Prescott. Is this going to be Dak Prescott's last year as the Dallas Cowboy? If he does not make it to the Super Bowl this year, or the playoffs for that matter, does this mean that this is Dak Prescott's last year with the Cowboys? And will they move on from him to get Trey Lance ready to go and play for them? That's my biggest question that I have about the season about the Cowboys. It's either Super Bowl or bust for them, like it is every year pretty much. But Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard, Jake Ferguson, which I think will fill in nicely. He could be better than Dalton Schultz was. Nice offensive line. And then your defense, Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore, Michael Parsons. Enough is said about the Cowboys. The Giants have actually done some really nice things. I've been impressed with what the Giants have done this season as my favorite team in the NFL. I think they've done a lot of impressive things. Darren Waller. They got Darren Waller from the Raiders. Didn't see that coming, but that was also a nice pick. Paris Campbell, a slot receiver, played for Indy for a couple of years. Done really well there too. Drafted Hyatt in the draft. Could be something good. Offensive line that I think will be better. Saquon Barkley, the contract with him got figured out, and he will be playing at least for this year. Daniel Jones, who I can't say I don't hate Daniel Jones. Like, a lot of people think I hate Daniel Jones or I hate on him all the time. I don't hate on him. But as a Giants fan, as someone that watches football constantly, you have to understand that last year was a fluke year for Daniel Jones. Like, not taking anything away of what he did from last year, but you have to understand that he was very limited to what he had last year. He had no wide receivers that he could trust to throw the ball to. Okay. The offensive line was iffy, and all he really had was Saquon Barkley, and he had to bank on him to stay healthy. And fortunately, he did. Because if none of those players were around, Saquon Barkley wasn't around, Jones would have been a bust. Like, that's just being completely honest there. Okay. Defensively, could be better, should be better. Deontay Banks, I like him a lot as our corner. I think he's going to do really well there. And then you have Dexter Lawrence too, which I also I've always get impressed with, and Julian Love. Like, I think the pass rush is going to be better this year. I think they'll be more consistent. But Brian Daboll has put together a culture in the Giants community that we haven't seen since the Tom Coughlin days. So I wouldn't be too shocked if the Giants made the playoffs. I probably wouldn't even be too shocked if they even won this game on Sunday night. I really wouldn't, because I think they have every opportunity to be able to win with a bang and be able to come out right away and say, hey, we are the Giants. This is our home. This is our year. Let's go. So this is a really tough game for me to go with, but I think I'm going to take the Cowboys to win this straight up. I think the Cowboys are more of the complete team for one. And I think that their defense and their pass rush is so much on Daniel Jones that I think the offensive line is going to be very hard for Daniel Jones to be able to cover up in and protect him. Like, I just think that offensive line is a big mismatch there against the Dallas defense that is probably going to be the best in the NFL this year. And then you can't argue with the Cowboys offense and how good they are too, because they really are something special. So I will take the Cowboys to win. But I wouldn't be too shocked if it was 3.5 plus 3.5 for the Giants, because they are the home team. I gotta give them a little bit of respect there. So I will take the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are gonna win, but I think that the Giants can probably just slip in there, and you can see where they kind of can go as the plus 3.5 there. Like, that could be possible. Like I said, I think the Giants have an opportunity to win at home in week 1. I think they have a good opportunity. I think their coaching staff is good. And I'm going to be rooting for the Giants to win because I'm a Giants fan. But I'm also being realistic, though, too, that I think the Cowboys are the overall better team. Maybe not so much overall coached. That'll be kind of a bit of a question. But I think offense, defense, I think they have the Giants beat by a mile at least for this first matchup. So I'll take the Cowboys to win, the Giants at plus 3.5. Or maybe I'll take the Cowboys 3.5. Whichever one you think comes first. Okay? All right. Next, in the final game here is the Monday Night Football game. This is the Aaron Rodgers debut with the New York Jets, Jets, who will be at home. This will be their home debut against their arch rivals of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. It doesn't get any more exciting to say those two names when you think of the Buffalo Bills, current day at least. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook. Who else do they have right now? Alan Lazard, CJ Uzama, Tyler Conklin. So a lot of like really unknowns, except for Garrett Wilson and Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. Like those are like three legitimate players that can play very well. But as far as like the rest of their team goes, they lost Corey Davis, which I kind of thought was going to happen eventually. That Corey Davis was not going to play this year, just because of how loaded their wide receiver room was. Their offensive line is still kind of in question. Still, I don't know if I exactly trust their offensive line. And then their defense is going to be top 2 or 3 this year. I think would you have C.J. Mosley, you have John Franklin Myers, Quinton Johnson. Oh no, Quinton Williams. Excuse me. Sauce Gardner, Will McDonald. I mean, this defense, you can't name any more better defensive players than those guys right now. So their defense is going to get themselves started. They're going to get themselves ready to go in week 1. But I don't know if their offense is quite ready to compete with Buffalo's defense. So Buffalo's defense, I think, is going to take that slight step back, especially now that you lost Von Miller for who knows how long. But like Gregory Rousseau, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, you have some good defensive players for Buffalo, but I think they're all kind of like injury prone and older now, where they're kind of not as reliable as they used to be once, especially Von Miller. So, but this could be the toughest test for the Jets. They have to start out the first 6 weeks in really tough fashion, and Buffalo is one of their first ones. So this will be a very tough game. I think it's going to be a close, low-scoring game. I can see it being like a 20-13 type of game. Very close, low-scoring, good coaching, maybe a couple controversial calls. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills, and I'm going to take their spread. I think the Jets are primed to be good this year under Aaron Rodgers. I think they will be better this year, especially at quarterback. I think they're a lot better than what they had last year in Zach Wilson or Mike White. I think those guys just weren't cutting it for the amount of talent that they had. So and that's kind of the reason, not kind of, but that's exactly the reason why the Jets went for Aaron Rodgers, because they are Super Bowl ready, paper-wise at least. So this is pretty much Super Bowl or bust this year for the Jets. I'd like to see the Jets do well. I think they're going to do well this year. But in week 1, when you got to go play the Buffalo Bills and that defense and Josh Allen, if you got to face Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and Dalton Kincaid and who else? Damian Harris, like the run game and everything like that. Like, run game is still suspect. I don't think the run game is that great, but Josh Allen leading the rushing attacks, never easy. And definitely not the kind of start that you would want to start off your season playing Josh Allen. I would be very scared if I were the Jets. So I will take the Bills. I'm going to take the Bills to win, and I will take them to win at 2.5. I just think that I think they're evenly matched, but at the same time, the Bills have done much better in years past and starting in week 1 than the Jets have. And I think it's going to take some time for the Jets to get themselves ready to go. I just think it's going to take them, especially when they got to play 6 weeks straight up really hard teams. That's not going to be easy for them. And there you all have it for my week 1 NFL picks for the 2023-24 NFL season. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Leave a like button down below. Drop that like down below. Leave a comment down below and hit that subscribe button for more JP Football Fanatics content. This is JP saying thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.